I don't see the change because all we do is we meet and we do high tea and we talk about it and we walk away.
Yeah. I was like, no, I want to do more than just take a stab at it. Like, we're going to change this. And so I was quite bullish in my ways of changing that narrative. And that's what my career has been. I've leaned and leaped into things and spaces that, one, I didn't have a frame of reference in terms of someone else doing it.
Yeah.
I was one of the first black, female CPOs in this country. There's no one else who's been in that space as a CPO.
You do a lot of keynote speaking, which is part of networking, right? And this word networking, you know, every time I speak about it, some people will blatantly say, I don't like networking. Or others will go to an event and then they'll sit with the people they know. Or they'll go to an event and sit in the corner on their own. So why do you think, what is the role, in your opinion, of mentorship and networking? Hi everyone, welcome back to Hot Seat with Penzola. Thank you so much for tuning in again. We are still celebrating Phenomenal Women for the month of August. And it's an absolute pleasure for me to be talking to Andisa, who is a Chief People Officer, and she's also a co-founder of Women in Tech. Andisa, thank you so much for coming to join me today.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to be here.
It's such an absolute pleasure to have you here today, and you look gorgeous.
Thank you. As do you.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so before we actually talk and celebrate you as a phenomenal woman, right? Just give me a brief overview of who you are. What is top of mind for you as you approach this? I mean, we're already, half year, and yeah. It's 2023 is almost over. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So I'm a Chief People Officer working in the fintech space, which is an incredibly exciting and I think agile space to be in as a black woman. I think it's very, very important to kind of put that and set that as a caveat.
Yeah.
Parallel to that, my other world is advocating for the technological inclusion of women. Just across the spectrum, not even just women getting access to jobs, but I think getting access to the right economic participation.
Correct.
In that sector. So that I strongly advocate for. And I guess the other side of the coin is I've got a very, very strong, solid role in the IPM. Having served in the advisory committee.
What does IPM stand for?
So the IPM is the Institute of People Management for Sub-Saharan Africa, and it is a body that really kind of looks after the practices and governance and compliance, and if you will, kind of sets out the guardrails for HR professionals to kind of be able to have, I think, a set of rules, as it were, I think outside of the legislative stuff.
Or like some sort of framework to transform the industry.
Exactly. Okay. And so I play a very active role from an advisory perspective. I think if I had to look, kind of take a step back and kind of go, the last 6 months, we're now mid-year through, I think so many things that are happening from a macroeconomic perspective. I think some of those things are political. I think, from the context of my world, I think ESG is really top of mind. I think for us as professionals, holding corporates, I think honest and accountable to, I think, some of the social impact and the role that we play as employers.
Yeah.
And so that is really, really key for me. So if I marry kind of all of these things in one, it kind of feels like this perfect storm of advocacy, of actually doing work, of being in the forefront, but also I think a place of enablement.
Correct.
Because I think it's one thing when we talk about, empowerment as women, and we see this a lot, right? And we're getting into that season of a lot of these events, right? And some of them are great, right? They're wonderful to attend. I often ask myself at the end, what next?
Correct.
So sure, we had a lovely high tea and everyone looked cute, right? Like it was amazing.
Execution.
Right, so what do we do after that, right?
That,
so, and I often find that somewhere in these spaces, we don't hold ourselves accountable in terms of being able to report back and say, cool, we've gathered together as a bunch of women from an empowerment perspective. You know what? Last year I put Penny on. Right, there was a deal I was working on and she does X, Y, and I brought her on. Or Penny's then paid it forward by bringing somebody else on. And I think the complexity of that conversation is something we tend to shy away from. I tend to want to get right in the heat of it because I live it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I live it.
And I must say, you're raising something quite critical, and this is what I've always said, that when it comes to things that must be done, things that must be transformed, we do a lot of awareness. We do so much awareness, and I think awareness is very transactional for me. So it's, and I therefore do not see transformational steps afterwards. So I don't see the change, because all we do is we meet and we do high tea and we talk about it and we walk away.
Yeah.
So we almost need to find daily actions that speak to that conversion, right? But the other thing I wanted to go back to you is you studied PR, right?
Yeah.
And then you're a chief people officer.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that journey, that change, right?
It was an interesting conundrum for me. I got to grade 12. I didn't quite know where I wanted to be. I hadn't found my aha moment. I think maybe like the average 18-year-old, right? People were going into the sciences and all these things. And I was somewhat very opinionated. I think I've always been opinionated. And at the time, my guidance teacher, bless her heart, she said, "Oh, you speak so well and you write so well. You know, you should go into journalism." And so I began the journey.
I have to laugh, though. Sorry to cut you. I have to laugh. You speak so well. I'm not sure what that is, but anyway, did you understand it?
That's a whole episode.
Okay.
That is a whole episode. Okay.
All right, got you.
We can come back and
yes,
we can unpack
the speak
right?
well. Okay.
Because that's a whole other thing. But I think the journey began with I went into journalism under the guise of I speak well, I write well.
Correct.
So you're going to make a phenomenal journalist. And 6 months into it, I thought, this is not really for me. I just didn't feel stretched.
6 months into the studies.
No, 6 months into the job.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So I studied it. I enjoyed aspects of it. I think there were parts of it I was like, this makes sense. Yes, this is for me. But I think holistically what that career is, I mean, I've got a great deal of respect for folks who are in the fields, because it is taxing, it is tiring. There's a lot of emotional depth that's required from a journalist. I think particularly if you're a journalist covering, I think, the more human parts of the story, because where we are as a society, we're at a very delicate and very fragile part of our human experience. And I can't imagine having to cover that objectively. I'm a big teddy bear. Like I've got a, there's a massive, hard, core, but really like inside I'm like softy. And so I learned very early on, I wasn't cut out for that. I moved into PR at the time, and I think context is also important. This is 15 plus years ago. I felt I wasn't a good fit for PR where PR was, in the context of South Africa. I then, interestingly enough, worked at a recruitment agency where the owner, one of the clients we had was Shanduka. And there began the pivot and the shift. So the first shift was I became Cyril Ramaphosa's youngest PA. It was not in my cards of my career, in my deck of cards. It wasn't at all. And I suppose one could say it was one of those things where I was the right person at the right time at the right place.
Correct.
And I did that for 3 years. It allowed, and I think gave me room to grow. I think it gave me access to a phenomenal individual. It gave me access to incredible professionals who I hold in such high regard. I mean, all of them are now C-suite execs across multiple industries. And so it became the nice, I think, like nice ground just to form me as a professional. And it was in that time where I then made the shift into people, into people space. And it was almost like I had my aha moment, and I was like, okay, what are the things I absolutely love? Like, I love working with people. I enjoy that. I enjoy solving complex problems. I enjoy building out strategies, because I'm a strategist at heart. I played chess when I was like a little child. In fact, I teach my children to play chess, and so I can think strategically. And so HR kind of felt like the right fit. And then I began the journey, which has led me to today, and I think the executive that I am today.
Sure.
So colorful journey. I always say like my CV is very colorful.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that about colorful CVs, and I think it resonates with me, because I've always been one that believes that a career should not be a ladder. A career is a jungle gym, in my opinion. So when you take your kids to a jungle gym, there's all sorts of different ways to play. And, you know, there's a swing, there's a slide. And that's how we should actually treat our careers, because, you know, the ladder format is kind of outdated. There can only be one HR director at a time, right? So if you don't take the opportunity to move sideways and create some sort of depth in terms of your skill set,
that's it.
It does then sort of make you irrelevant in the future, because you know, we live in a volatile corporate environment, and I think one must actually ensure that they remain relevant, right? So let's now talk about, you are now this, you know, today an executive in the people space. You're doing lots of amazing things. I see you do a lot of keynote speaking. You encourage, you mentor. Amazing job. But you're also a co-founder of Women in Tech.
Yes, I am.
So I must tell you, I was head of technology, you know, at some point in my career, and it's a very tough space.
It is.
Especially as a black female.
It is indeed.
Talk to me about that. How's that going?
Yeah.
Where did it start?
So it started actually from a conference that was held in Sun City with my employer at the time. And they had about 600 professionals in the ICT across the entire ecosystem, from, you know, like all over the place. And it was, I think, like 3 or 4 day conference. And at the end of it, the theater leader said, "Oh, could all the CCIEs in the room please stand up?" And I was sitting there, and it was just men that stood in a room of 600 people.
Wow.
And I thought, in 2019, that can't be right. But there's women in the room. And so it was, you know, I kind of walked away from that. You know, I talked to my GM at the time, and I said, surely there's something we can do about this. And he
of
said,
course.
He said, oh, well, you know, like, you know, take a stab at it. I was like, no, I want to do more than just take a stab at it. Like, we're going to change this. And so I was quite bullish in my ways of changing that narrative. You know, if you understand, I think, some of the critical skills from a national perspective as a country, CCIEs, and for everyone else, I think, watching me, the acronym, you know, is essentially, it's the highest level of, you know, a technical aptitude in the ITC space. So if you translate that into the medical space, think of a surgeon, right? So like, that's the highest you can go.
That's the highest you can go.
That's the highest you can go. And I thought, this is incredibly odd. There are women in the ecosystem. They're there. They're qualified. And I think when I started to then, with my co-founder, started to do the research, right? What are some of the inhibitors, right? Like, where are women falling short? And it was an interesting learning period for us, because for me, I eventually settled on the fact that a lot of these things that we have found out were actually artificial barriers, right? It is, you know, it's the notion that, well, to become a CCIE, there's long hours, there's overnight work, you know, like there's the change that happens overnight, you know, like in the infrastructure, right? And I'm like, what's that got to do with gender?
What's that got to do with gender?
Like, you can't, like, tell me something better, right? And so my employer at the time allowed us to build a strategy. We went and we pitched it to a C-suite exec in San Francisco who worked at this particular organization. And, you know, I think they looked at the strategy, they thought, okay, well, you all are very ambitious. This is lovely.
Okay, yeah.
You guys are going to produce 3 CCIEs that are black females by yourselves.
Go on ahead.
Like, the country literally is about 3 to 5 at the time, right? That we could account for as South Africa. And you all think you can produce 3 on your own in a 5-year period.
Wow.
And I said, I really do. And I think if you give us the autonomy, you give us the enabling tools, right? Tools of enablement. I really think we can climb, and we can, you know, we can decolonize a lot of this thinking, particularly in this organization and in the greater ecosystem. And what was incredible, and I say this with a great deal of pride, in the first year, we got through our first CCIE, right? Who went on to become an employee of the year for another organization. In our 4 or 5 year history, we have produced 4 CCIEs. We've got another 3 or 4 that are hopefully, when they're ready and they are brave enough to take the lab exam, they will go on that journey. So there's exams that have gone on now in the middle of the year, and there's another subset of exams that can be written at the end of the year. And I think for me, again, it is testament to the fact that there's a lot of things we need to deconstruct about our perceptions of things.
Correct.
Right? The fact that it's been perceived that women can't do a changeover, for an example, because it's an overnight job, because women have got kids. But the reality is there are women whose ambitions supersede, I think, what is generally accepted. I tend to be one of those women. I can put my children to bed. I can work on a piece of research or a speech till 2 a.m. because it troubles me, and I'm a perfectionist and I want to get it right.
Well, also you've got to do what you need to do, right?
You've got to do what you need to do, right?
Yeah.
And I think we all have different drivers, right? So whether that's from a technical aptitude or a soft skill, right? Like I think we all are driven by different things. And for me, it was to create a movement and a space for women to realize those dreams, those that had them, and to make that a possibility. And it's been a beautiful partnership. I mean, there's a lot of other big corporates who have gone on the journey with us. They see the value in how we have structured a learning pathway that speaks to someone acquiring this kind of certification. Because it is also quite nuanced and quite unique. It's one of those things you do on the job, right?
Correct.
So it's a lot of experiential learning.
Practical stuff.
Of practical stuff,
Yeah,
right? So when the network is down, right?
Yes.
When Vodacom is down or whatever network, right? Your cell phone doesn't work. It takes an architect, in that
or
space.
a lead product engineer.
Or lead product
Yes,
engineer,
yes,
right?
yeah.
To think strategically, what is the problem before getting in engineers to come and fix the problem.
So I want to come in there quickly around. It sounds brilliant. I mean, you are a people officer within the fintech, which closely aligns to the women in tech. Talk to me about the challenges. I mean, yes, you pitched it, and they were like, you're too ambitious. So what were those daily challenges that were experienced, and what is the journey? What does the journey look like for the individuals in the program?
Sure. I think the challenges from a co-founder perspective, it was really getting people on board, because again, we were doing something that's never been done before. There isn't a structured learning program, or at that point. I mean, I think that particular employer has now curated one subsequent, and it's affirming to us that I think we were kind of the blueprint, right, for a corporate to now go, okay, what have these guys done? What parts of this can we extrapolate, and what parts of this can we formalize? And so getting people to kind of believe in the dream, getting mentors who often were male. I mean, it's a largely male-dominated space.
It is.
And for them to understand the value of when you have a diverse team in thought, not necessarily gender, in thought, what you're able to to derive from a results perspective will far supersede any construct that you've subscribed to. And so getting in mentors and understanding that, look, this isn't the silver bullet. We're in this for the long haul. So so if you come on board, like this is a 3-5 year long journey. Like do you have capacity? Do you have heart to give back? Because to give back takes heart. Because it takes a lot of sacrifice. I mentor after hours on weekends. That means time away from my loved ones, time away from my family, time away from the things that I could be doing. And so if my drivers were superficial around giving back and mentoring people, I'd be dead in the water 3 years ago. And so the driver always has to be, it always has to be bigger than you. And I think I've been very intentional the last couple of years. In fact, I'm very much in the limelight about everything else, often less about women's tech connection. And that's by design. Because I don't want this thing to be about me. It's about the women who are part of the program, and to create that space for them to go then and pay it forward, and for them to be the face of it, not me.
So I do think that the industry is, I agree with you, it's highly male dominated, right? And in my experience, the women that I've either worked with in the industry in terms of technology, the staying power is very short. Purely because of the environment and how hostile it is. So what's the rate? In your world, how do you see sustainability of these individuals that you have now empowered in terms of, the qualification that they've gotten and the jobs that they're in? Because I've had a few lead product engineers work. I mean, not less than 6 months. They leave the environment. and not because they have kids or anything. It's just the environment is toxic. So how does the organization ensure that we prepare these individuals to understand that they're going into an environment which they may be rejected, they may be looked as not knowing what they're doing, and they have to continuously prove themselves. So what is that psychological support that is provided to these women?
So we do a lot of mentoring and a lot of coaching. I often advocate and I encourage the women to do a lot of shadow work, because that environment, has an affinity to bring out your worst insecurities.
Correct.
Because often these women tend to be threats to their own bosses. In fact, I'll give you a good example. A woman who's in my program, wanted to apply for a different role that was a little senior than the team of men that she's currently in. She is currently pursuing a CCIE. And she was kind of told anecdotally that actually you don't need to do the CCIE thing. Like just apply for the job. Like just leave the stuff alone. And she's like, no, but this is for my own personal growth and development. And it's been such a, I've walked this journey with her. In fact, this is as recent as a month ago. So this is something that's currently happening now in what could be seen as a progressive corporate environment in South Africa. And so we continue, I think, to see, the hostility play out. We continue to see, I think, some, and not all. There are great male advocates, in fact, who have walked this journey with us, and I commend them immensely. But I think, the general experience.
We always have to beg them. We have to force our way through.
Exactly, right. You've got to submit a business case. You've got to pitch the thing. You've got to, go and advocate for someone. There's always an extra added step that's required. And it's frustrating, but it hasn't been a deterrent.
It's exhausting as well.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's mentally, challenging. But if anything else, I take it as a challenge, because there is a lot of work that needs to be done in that space. And sure, I think we're seeing now the rise of the female CIO. Right, and and there's now CIO bodies,
correct,
and which is
great,
is great, and my hope would be for this group of executives that they will figure something else amongst themselves, or some kind of a paid forward program.
Correct.
And the women in their organizations and the women in this ecosystem, they can then curate a bespoke experience that one helps them circumvent the challenges that they underwent,
but also pave the way
and
for those that are coming behind them.
And make it easier.
Yeah.
I see no reason, I think, for a younger HR person coming behind me for her to walk a similar, if not a harder journey than me. I don't have an ego, so I don't need to create barriers for someone. If anything else, I would love for another Andy in the next 2 years.
Look, I must say, there's very few of Andys, right? But the reality on the ground is that once you are that black female CIO or chief people officer, there's always that chip on the shoulder to say, well, I worked hard to get here, so I'm not going to make things easy for you. And we see it happen. We see it absolutely happen.
Unfortunately.
And I know someone was talking about their work environment, and we've always, and this is a predominantly environment where the executives are all black. And this person says to me, there's actually a floor for execs only. So everybody else is open plan, but there's a floor for execs and they have officers.
Sure.
So that open door, that approachability, it's gone.
Gone.
So half the time we blame the other race. To say we are not getting opportunities, but those that are black that do get the opportunity, then they close the door, and because they feel they've arrived. So no, we must see yourself.
There's a conversation to be had, Penny, around black folks and gatekeeping.
Yes,
and it is
absolutely.
a thorn on my side.
Absolutely,
it is a thorn on my side, and so I don't neglect the psychological impact of the legacy of our country, and how we often get into these places and spaces where we operate from a place of scarcity. It's a very scarce mindset, right? There's one or two opportunities, so I can't let all of us.
No, you can't. Yeah, once you've got it, you can't all
come
here. Yes.
Right, like let's gatekeep each other.
But there's
out
also
of
that
it.
sense of
and I find it
exclusivity.
problematic.
right? That sense of exclusivity.
It's
to say,
exclusivity.
yes.
There's a classism, layer to it as
Yes,
well, right?
yes.
That when we start acquiring certain things, when we start becoming certain individuals, we now think we reserve the right to treat people a certain way. And I feel some kind of way about. In fact, I'm trying to find my words. Trying to find my words.
So no, I totally get you, and I think it is a topic on its own.
It's
right?
a topic.
Yeah, it's a topic on its own. Now I want to come back to you, Andisa. Right?
Yes.
So it's you're a mom. You spoke about teaching your children chess. You speak about mentoring people after hours and Saturdays. You've got this women in tech entity. Then you are chief people officer at in the corporate environment. Yeah. Talk to me about how you manage all of that, and where's the emotional strength coming from to be able to do all these things. And I know that there's drivers, but what does it look like on a daily basis?
Some days are calm and some days are chaotic. I've got a 15-year-old and an 11-year-old boys, so they lead very active lives. There's sports, there's a whole lot of stuff, and then there's work, then there's my public speaking.
And you do public speaking quite a lot.
I do quite a lot.
Yeah.
So on average, once a week, once every 2 weeks, I've got an event or two, and so that part of my life tends to keep me busy. I'm quite lucky that I've been the last couple of years, and maybe it's come with growth and wisdom, to lean in towards the things that I enjoy and to accept the things that I don't enjoy, but I don't let them get me down. And so there are days when I can be business suit Andy, and we're slaying dragons, and we're on the stage, and we're changing the world, which is amazing, right?
Yes.
But I also equally enjoy downtime. I just want to take my feet off. I enjoy walking bare feet. It's an old habit of mine, and it doesn't matter where I am. But so I've had to embrace who I am as an entity. I show myself a lot of grace. I think in my process of becoming, I've also had to unlearn a lot of things that we are socialized to believe what successful women need to look like, how they need to act. This whole, I've suffered burnout. I've been hospitalized as a result. I collapsed. I was at work, I collapsed. Sure. And so I understand it quite well. And so I don't overstretch myself unnecessarily. But more importantly, I'm graceful towards myself.
Talk to me about your failures. Talk to me about the times where you felt you just had it and you couldn't anymore.
Gosh, I think there's a few in my career, and there's a few I think in my personal life. Maybe let's start with the latter.
Right.
I think going through a divorce with very young children, took its toll on me. As it would. I got married incredibly young. I was raised as a church girl. And that's what I aspired to, right? And I was going to be this mom, and I was going to have 4 kids, and blah blah blah, right? And then you get to a phase also where you have the life and the lifestyle and all the trappings of the things that you should want, right? Like we're out here, like we've worked hard, we're in the house, we're in the German car, we're in the, and then the thing is not working, and then having to have the honesty to look across someone you deeply loved and to say, I think this is the stop where we both have to get off.
Sure.
And that's hard. Like no one ever prepares you for it. There's no amount of therapy or no amount of coaching that can lead you to have to sit someone down and be kind in that moment and say, we have to get off this bus, both of us. Not one.
And go separate ways.
And go separate ways. So that was incredibly challenging, but I think it also gave me a new lease of life where I had to reframe, my construct of what family is, and no longer be married. And so I don't necessarily take it as a failure whilst I've brought it up.
Correct, yes.
I don't take it as a failure, but I do take it as a big leap of learning. Because it really gave me an opportunity, I think, to learn, and I certainly hope for him as well. To become, a better version of who we can be. outside of the union.
Yes, outside of the kids that you share together.
I think the difficulty a couple of years ago, so I was diagnosed with breast cancer 3 years ago. An incredibly difficult period physically, emotionally. I had the benefit, and I loosely say this now, that I got to heal after my op, when everyone else was in COVID. Right, so I got to heal quietly. I didn't post anything about it. I didn't have a pity party.
And no one nobody was visiting anyone.
No one was visiting anyone.
Nobody wanted to hook up.
No one to do anything, right? And
yes.
I was just in my home, kind of nursing my spirit, nursing my body. I had a difficult time accepting why it had happened. At 36, I was 36 years old. I didn't understand it. I felt my body had failed me, and I had all of these insecurities. Oh, now what's going to happen after this op? Now I'm going to have this scar forever, and I can't wear this, and sure, as a woman, right, I'm not as a woman, I was like, no, I don't feel attractive. I don't feel all of these things that I should. And that in itself, was a journey on its own. If I think of work, oh my gosh, look, I think as a head of HR, you're always at the epicenter of the fire, right? So you either have the blessing of an amazing executive team who will take your advice, take your strategy, and they'll take it on board, even when they disagree with it.
Correct.
Or you won't. And often when you won't, and if you're like me, I advocate for people, I advocate for what's right. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
And often it gets me into a lot of trouble. It gets into a lot of trouble. So I'm always kind of in the fire. And so I think there's been 1 or 2 instances where I've had to sever my employment relationship with an employer because we just weren't seeing eye to eye. I felt it was the right thing to do, what I had said. They obviously felt differently, and they have their prerogative.
Yeah.
But I pride myself in standing for what's right. My integrity and my soul is not up for sale.
Sure.
It's just not. It's not up for sale. There's no job, there's no amount of money where you could put on the table and I could go, right? And I know there's the very cynical view of everyone has a price, right? Like people will, cynically say stuff, everyone has a price. Like, if you could rob a bank and no one would know, you get out 40 million, would you? I'm like, guys, no. Like, how do you sleep at night?
Well, I could sleep properly. I definitely could sleep properly.
This is why I say, right? I think there's people who all have different drivers.
Correct, yeah. Now, Andy, I think let's talk to a young Andy out there that's watching, that has all these aspirations, that has a full-time job, thinking about a side hustle, or thinking of pursuing a business. What do you say to her?
So I think what I would tell the young Andy is be authentically yourself and embrace the things that are unique to you. Take risks, even if they're not calculated. If you see something, it resonates with you in your spirit, or the journey that you think you should be on, follow your instinct. I mean, women are built in such a beautiful way. We've got this innate, thing that we just know stuff, right, without knowing stuff. And, so follow that silent voice. It's there for a reason. Use it as your North Star. I think to Penny's point, and I like how Penny always phrases it, that your career should be a jungle gym. And that's what my career has been. I've leaned and leaped into things and spaces that, one, I didn't have a frame of reference in terms of someone else doing it. Yeah. I was one of the first black, female CPOs in this country. There's no one else who's been in that space as a CPO. I didn't know what that was supposed to look like. I knew what I needed to look like for me in order to resonate with me, that it's authentically me, and I keep honoring that. So it's important, I think, to always operate from your place of authenticity. Honor yourself, listen to that voice, keep taking risks. I think, take different opportunities. If there's a stretch assignment, if you work in a corporate, take the stretch assignment for 6 months. Put your hand up for a piece of work in another team. Go and learn other things. So I think, diversify your war chest of skills. Have different things that you can pull stuff from, because it'll always serve you well at the end. Because what I've learned now, I am now at the tender age of 40. Is I now work at a fintech. It's an incredibly small company. but I've gone from being a CPO to now a chief revenue officer. And it's the last 20 years of working, of doing different things. I was never married to the idea of being a specialist, ever. I was always married to the idea of being a generalist. And it's opened up my world so much that, you know, like now I can do investor relations. I can do, you know, new business development. I can do a bit of marketing.
Right.
You've seen me on ENCA. I'm on here, I'm on there.
Yeah.
And that's because in the training years that led me to this point, I never used to say, no, this is not my job. This is but that one's job. I'm not supposed to do this. I was always the person in the team going, oh, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wait, how do I do this? Like, you know, and I would learn, and I picked up a lot of those things, and I built this beautiful war chest that now every day, anyone can ask me anything at work and go, can you? I'm like, I think I can. Like, let me give it a go. And it's so fun.
It is.
So it's brought so much color to my life, and it's taken away the stagnancy of my job, right? That, you know, these days I'll put my hand up and I'll go to like a random meeting. I've learned stuff about banking now. Whilst, yes, I come from banking, but I was in a very specialized role.
Correct.
Now I've learned the banking systems and instruments and how I can use those for social impact, which is the actual work that I want to do.
Exactly.
That's the stuff that pulls my heart.
Exactly.
And so I think building a war chest, you know, keep putting stuff in, like different stuff.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. And even if it feels uncomfortable, that's good.
That's good.
You're on the right path.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're on the right path.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I think I resonate. You're absolutely spot on. A jungle gym of note.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
It's exciting.
I think I've also experienced that in my career. But I think it requires you to be bold.
Yeah.
It requires you not to be scared. Okay, well, like, I suppose being scared is good, right? Because
no, being scared is
good.
good.
You don't know what you're going into, but you know you're going anyway. I think as a last question, is I know you spoke a lot about mentoring and you do a lot of keynote speaking, which is part of networking, right? And this word networking, you know, every time I speak about it, some people will blatantly say, "Oh, I don't like networking," or others will go to an event and then they'll sit with the people they know, or they'll go to an event and sit in the corner on their own. So, why do you think? What is the role, in your opinion, of mentorship and networking, and how does it play out in empowering, you know, women, either in the technology business or any other in industry? You know, so that they achieve their goals. How do we use these tools of mentorship and networking?
Yeah. So maybe let's start with the latter, networking. I believe in the power of a black book. Often, you know, there's a saying that it's not what you know, it's who you know. And it's not so much who you know. It's often I often have to remind my mentees, and I say, the fact that I've got the ability to pick up the phone and phone someone, it's not them answering the phone. They're answering the phone because I'm calling.
Correct.
And they know who I am, yeah? And so it's building social capital. There's power in having social capital. Social capital, if you distill it down outside of you being an executive, is, and you'll appreciate this, you know, having been in HR, is often, you know, at the end of a quarter, at the end of the year, you know, executives will sit and they'll talk about bonuses. And people forget the pageantry about stuff. There's a pageantry to life, right? I know it's, you know, we're in this very individualistic world of, like, I don't care what people think about you. You should care what people think about you. Because that's your social capital. So what people say about you in the room when you're not there is a representation of how you behaved when they were there with you.
And it ultimately links to the number of zeros.
Precisely.
That you're going to get.
Precisely. Yeah. So when executives sit, you know, they discuss, you know, team bonuses, blah, blah, blah. And I've been in meetings where high performers and people mention, I'm like, who's, you know,
I don't know this person.
Andisa from where?
Who's this?
She works here? You want to give her this much? What does she do around here? Right?
Exactly.
And like no one knows who you are.
Yeah.
And so we underestimate and we underplay the power of pageantry. There's a pageantry to life. People must like you, right? There has to be a reputation that precedes you. And often that reputation is attached to how capable and, you know, how well you do your job. So that perception is built.
It's built, yeah.
And so for me, when I attend events, I rarely sit with people that I know. I'll go and greet them. Hey, it's good to see you. And I'll go find someone I've never seen in any event. And I attend a lot of events, so I see a lot of familiar faces. And there's a bit of strategy to that. There's a bit of strategy to that, but it is important, I think, to build that black book. That black book is so important. There's a place in your life where what you do from a skills perspective is no longer important.
Correct.
Anything from the HR space that I need to do at work right now, I can outsource. I can get a junior to do it. But to be able to do certain things and to make certain phone calls, it's either I've got that know-how and I've got that black book in my phone, or I can send an email, or I can't.
You can't,
right?
Yeah.
And often you get to a level where that's sort of how you're measured, right? Your effectiveness is measured by the power of your influence.
Correct.
And the power of the impact that you have on others. And so
because ultimately a lot of the stuff we deliver through others, right?
It's through
so
others.
You don't physically do that,
no.
right? So you deliver through others.
I haven't done, actual HR work for like a long while, right? There are young upcoming HR professionals, who need to do that, who need to grow, who need to, trial and fail. I'm there to be that safe fail mechanism for them. When they do fail, I'm there to catch them before they fail too far. Right? Like that's my job. And to nurse them and to protect, but to also, give a learning platform. The power of mentorship, I've been a product of mentorship since the beginning of my career. And I think what it is you have to decide what you want to get out of that relationship. With all of my mentees, I'll go in and I'll sit back and I'll wait for them. And often the new ones are like, why is she so quiet? Like she talks a lot. What's going on? And I'm like, you need to decide what you want out of me. Right? I've got a whole yellow pages. I've got like a whole book. Right? I don't know what you need right now. And if I feel like you're going in the wrong direction, my job as a leader is to also to bring it back in. But depending on where you are and what you're looking for, I've got 3 different mentors right now. I need different things from 3 different people. I'm not of the view that one of them could give me all of these things. And so, I kind of go in and out of these relationships. So depending what challenges I have, I will speak to this one, a lot more than the other ones, or I'll revisit a conversation with another one. So it is also about, you'll recall earlier I spoke about the diversity of thought and the diversity of different people around you. Like all my mentors look nothing like me. Right? And I love
the point,
that.
Right?
What
are you learning from yourself?
Exactly. So I enjoy that they also challenge me in my thinking and they stretch my lateral thinking.
Correct.
And they give me no room, I think, to be like, oh no, like cut me some slack. Like, what do you mean?
No, there's none of that.
No, there's none of that.
So I think I want to just close off, right? So in closing off really quickly, what's next for Andy? What's next for Andisa? Be it home, be it work, be it anything. What's next for you?
Work, I definitely want to expand, I think, the power of my impact. From a women's tech perspective, we're growing into Kenya now, which is a very exciting prospect. We've got 2 chapters in Nigeria that are doing very well.
Nice.
I'm very pleased, I think, with our mentees from the Nigeria area.
Nice.
And so we're looking into East Africa as now kind of the next step. And so that is incredibly exciting.
So is the registration for open for all, or is there a particular process that we need to follow?
So it's open for all. There are different verticals and slipstreams depending on your either specialization at the time or the direction that you're growing in. And so we'll kind of assess where you're at against the backdrop of what you can offer. Correct.
Yeah.
So Women's Tech Connection is really, really exciting right now. So I think, just growing that and just making it a movement and a platform that's available to all, sits really deeply at the center of my soul.
And personally, what's next for Andisa?
Oh my gosh, personally, I definitely want to travel more. I'm enjoying, I think, the fintech world. I'm enjoying learning. So I definitely want to kind of touch points, between either Silicon Valley and I think other markets. I think there's some very sexy things that are going on in the world.
Absolutely.
And so I want to become a learner. I've got a very teachable spirit naturally. And so I'm kind of in my learner zone. And so I'm just kind of taking like a lot of information in. So yeah, I'm enjoying this tech thing. I think it's going in the right direction. It tickles my fancy greatly. It really does.
It actually makes you look good as well.
I look so good doing it too. So it helps.
Oh man, Andy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a long time coming, eh?
It has been rather.
I really admire your journey. I resonate with it. You know, just trying out different things. It's always scary.
It's very scary.
But once you've succeeded and you've now learned the skill, it's such a reward. And I really, really appreciate you taking the time out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Oh, cheers.
Ah. So guys, thank you so much for sticking through this conversation. It was really a wonderful conversation, and I do think that it further reiterates and affirms that the world is your oyster. You can absolutely do anything and everything that you want to do for as long as you are bold enough to make that step. You don't have to conform to any particular way of doing things. If you can dream it, you can do it. So go ahead and do whatever it is that you've been holding back to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. If you have any questions for myself or Andisa, drop the comment. I will get her to answer your questions. Thank you so much. It's been real. Andisa, thank you so much for coming to join me today.
Thank you for having me. It's
Yeah.
so good to be here.
It's so good to I mean, yeah. It's so... Hallelujah.
Don't cut.
Right. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this episode. Very insightful and empowering. Pela, you can't kill everything. You must kill it once and relax. I heard that and I was like, let me carry on.
Let's fix that.
Okay. No, let's fix it. I knew. No, I was guilty there. I knew it. Okay, guys, thank you so much for staying. Okay, let's start it from the cheers.
Okay.
Cheers.